Hey guys, this is Dricklin off the Esenthel forums, and today I'm going to be showing you a new tool for EEDevTools called Luabind Generator. What this tool does is scans through all the selected Esenthel header files and detects all the classes, all the methods, different variables, constant, stuff like that, and outputs it into the Luabind-equivalent so that you can run the C++ function or constant or all that stuff. You can run that in Lua. You can create scripts and run that through Lua instead of running it through C++. So I'm actually in the middle of packing right now. I'm going to be moving halfway across the country for a new job in 2 days, so this video is going to be short and sweet. And there's probably going to be a lot of mumbling and bumbling until I figure out the wording, because I'm just kind of winging this. So I apologize for that, but let's go ahead and get started. If you don't know, EEDevTools is a bunch of tools I've been working on for Esenthel Engine. So one of them is the project creator. So I'm going to be using that to create the new project for this little demo for the purpose of this video. So if you never used this before, you're going to have to compile the source using code editor. Just basically open up the EEDevTools project and select project creator through code editor and hit build, and there you go. And once you get the exe, you need to drag and drop it into the Esenthel Engine tools folder, which I've already done. And it's pretty easy. You just write the path to your project, give it a name, select which version of Visual Studio you want, or which one you're using. I'm using 2010, so select that, hit create. Now I got my new project. There we go. So now it's time to use the Luabind generator. So this is, you should be, I'll go ahead and give you the exe, because I only have, I wrote this directly in Visual Studio 2010, so I don't have a 2008 project file. So for those of you that don't have 2010, you probably won't be able to compile it unless you upgrade. So I guess I'll go ahead and leave this in here. So hopefully it still works. As long as the engine hasn't been updated, it should still work, which probably will only be for the next week or two. Anyways, once you extract EEDevTools, just go ahead and just copy this over to the tools folder, just like the project creator, and open it, and here we go. So this is the new tool. Basically a list of all the header files. Some of them are not being listed. Some that you don't need or don't serve any purpose, like they output nothing. I've already taken care of all that. So you got a couple buttons. You can hit select all, which will go through and process all these files, but I don't really need to do that for the purpose of this tutorial. So I'm just going to hit default, which goes ahead and select just a couple of the most handy engine files I would think you would need to use. But I'm going to also select a couple more for the purpose of this tutorial. So I need to go ahead and hold Control and then select the capsule and circle, rectangle, and vertex index buffer. I'm actually going to be recreating the random tutorial that's available in the engine. Somewhere in here, right here, we're going to be rewriting this. Pretty much, for the most part, it's a perfect copy. So after we selected all that, just go ahead and hit process. And there you go, you're done. You can close that out. Go back to the tools folder, and then you see at the top you have EELua folder now. And what this is all the Luabind source code that you need. So if I go ahead and let's go ahead and open up the project I created using the project creator tool. Give that a second. Just remove this. It's pretty much just copies the tutorial project, and whatever files you already had in the tutorial project get copied over. So just remove that because it's really nothing. Let's go ahead and create a new item. Put this in the source folder. It automatically creates a data folder and a source folder. So if you use the tool, that is. Just say main cpp and save time. I already have a little skeleton of code snippet I'm just going to paste in here. This is pretty much the rawest basic thing you need to get started with the Esenthel Engine. Okay, so I guess what we need to do now is set up the Luabind and add Lua to our project, and you also need Boost. So if you haven't already started, you might want to start downloading Boost right now because you're going to need all the header files for that, which are not included because it's like 80 megabytes. Anyways, so we can go ahead and cut this EELua folder and then just come in here and paste it. Then let's go ahead and add a new filter to our project. We'll just call this EELua. Then just drag and drop the files, and there we go. There's the files we've created, which I'll go ahead and show you what they look like. Let's see. Like this is the display, you know, all the D, you know, d.text, d.full, d.toggle, all that stuff. This is what all this is for. This allows you to use that via Lua instead of C++. So this is all the different methods and constants and stuff like that. They're showing up wrong because we don't have a Luabind included in our project yet and all that. So let's close that, and then we need to go back to the scripting folder, which has the Luabind headers, the includes, and the libraries that you need, and then also the DLLs. So we need to copy all that, which might take a few seconds, more like a few minutes. So I'll copy that, go back to our scripting folder, and then just paste them in. I'll go ahead and pause the video right now because I think this is going to take about 4 or 5 minutes. Alright, I got everything copied in, so you should have Boost. You should have Boost in here now, and then the Luabind headers, and then Lua headers, and the libs, and then the DLLs. You need all that. So after you do that, then we got to edit a couple project settings in order to include all that into our project. Nothing too major, just a couple things. Yeah, you need to go into C/C++, and then General, and come down here, make sure you're on all configurations. Edit the additional include. Then you need to type project directory, slash include. And this will go ahead and include the include folder, so it'll include all of this automatically. Then we'll come down to linker and input. Make sure you're also on all configurations. Hit edit. This is one you're going to make sure you need to type correctly the first time to save you a little trouble, since they have different options. If you have a spelling mistake, you have to go through and you have to go through all 4 of these and then manually change them all. So make sure you get this right the first time. So you need to type project directory again, and then just /lib, and then Lua 5.1.lib, and then the same thing again, except Luabind.lib. And what this is these. So actually I don't need this dot right here. Lua 5.1 and then Luabind. That's what we need. So once you do that, make sure they're all okay, are correct, hit OK. And then we need to do one more thing, which is go into C/C++ under Advanced, and then disable specific warnings, just because there's a couple and they're annoying, so you might as well get them out. So 4251 and then a semicolon and then 4275. After you do all that, hit OK. Should be good to go. One more thing, we have to edit the sta.afx header file and be sure to actually include EELua. Just like that. And then just hit build. This will take a couple minutes, probably right around a minute, just if you're including the exact same files I am. Luabind is kind of slow because it uses a lot of templates, so if you're going to include all the files, there's about 158 I think that you can do. That takes roughly 5 minutes to compile on my computer, but then after you compile them, as long as you don't edit anything, you should not have to recompile it. So after the first time of waiting 5 minutes, you shouldn't have to wait that anymore. So it's not too bad. So this is pretty much done already. So let's go ahead and get started on writing the actual, well, let's get it all set up first. So we need to go ahead and add the Luabind namespace. And then for writing Lua scripts, we need the Lua state. And then let's make a function called run script, which will take the string for the path of our script and actually execute it. It's kind of hard to debug a Lua script, so the best I've figured out so far is to just log if there's any errors, so you know if it's compiling or not. If this returns 1, then there's an error somewhere in your script. If it returns 0, then you know there's no errors and it's going to compile and everything. So I'll just add some log, make it pretty. Then we need to come down to our init, and let's actually add. We need to go ahead and add all of these. Like if you open EELua.cpp, these are all our different modules. There's a module for every single source file in here. So we need to call this function, which will register all these modules for us instead of us having to do it by hand. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's pretty easy. Just say register modules, pass L, which is our Lua state. And that's it. Now, and shut, we need to come down to shut and say Lua close Lua state. So it gets closed when the application closes. And we should be good to go. Yep. Alright, so now we need to actually make it to where we can run the script. So we already have the function, so we can just go down into, like, since we're going to be recreating the random tutorial. Let's go ahead and open that. So we're going to be recreating this part right here, this whole draw function. We're going to be recreating that via Lua. So that means we're going to want our script to execute in the draw function. So we can just say run script, and we'll say source / random.lua. Everything should be good to go. So now we can go ahead and actually start creating the Lua script. Let's just say random.lua. Make sure you're in the source folder. If not, you need to change the path to whatever matches. So now we have our Lua script. Let's go ahead and do side-by-side view. So yeah. Writing in Lua is not exactly the same as writing in C++. There's a couple of differences, but it's not too bad. One thing you need to make sure of, though, is when you're calling functions through Lua, if it's a method and it's static, so a lot of these are static. So like, let me look in here. It's like all these methods for drawing dots and stuff like that. If you hover over them, come on, you can see that it says static void display draw dot. So if it says static, that means you need to use a period to call the method. So like d.clear. If it doesn't say static, then you need to use a colon. So if it says static, use a period. If it doesn't say static, use a colon. That'll save you some time, because otherwise it won't execute right. So anyways, let's get back to this. So we got if .kb, if space is pressed. So let's go ahead and write the Lua equivalent. Get this set up. So we have if kb and then a colon b and then kb space and then. So this is how you write the if statement in Lua. So we already have the d.clear.black. Now one thing I figured out when I was running this tutorial is that you can't, for whatever reason, calling vi.color and Lua does not want to work. vi.color and vi.end does not execute. It crashes, or it doesn't crash, but it won't execute the script because there's just an error. But for whatever reason, vi.dot actually works. I'm not sure why color and end doesn't. So we're gonna have to actually create two other functions that call it through C++. So if we go up back to our main, we just need to write two simple methods. which will call it for us. So there we go. Now we got, this is to call the color, and takes the color parameter and the call in. And now after we do that, we have to actually register it just like we do with our other modules. When you come down here, and we'll do one by hand. So you just say module, and then brackets, open it up, and then say def, and then the name, so vi underscore color, and then just say ampersand vi color, and then comma vi end ampersand vi end. And there you go. Now you should be able to call these, and Luabind will automatically determine that there's an argument in here, and then call that for you. So now we're good to go. So now we can come back to our Lua script, and then instead of saying like vi dot color, we're going to use vi underscore color, which is our method we just created. So we'll say vi underscore color, and then color alpha, turquoise, and 0.15. You don't need any F's. Don't put an F in there. I believe that will not make the script work. And don't put any semicolons. Lua doesn't use any of that. And then now we got, so we'll do a for loop for 10,000. So Lua also starts on 1 instead of 0. So 1, 10,000, do, end. There we go. Now that there's our for loop, we'll say vi dot dot random. Now here's another thing to note. In this tutorial, it uses default values, and the tutorial uses default values, so in the constructors and all that stuff, and the parameters and the arguments. So like bool inside equals true, that's the default is true. But Lua doesn't know that, so you have to actually specify true. You can't just leave this off and end it right here like the tutorial does. See how there's no true right here. It's taken off, but in Lua you have to actually keep that in there, and you have to do that for everything. So even with the capsule and all that. So with that in mind, this line's going to be a little bit longer than it is in the tutorial. So it's a capsule 0.5, and now we can create a new vec, and then create another vec. And this is because in capsule, if you go to capsule, you'll see we only have this constructor. So we need all 3 arguments. This is the radius, this is from, and this is to. If you were to actually go into the Esenthel header and find all that out, you'll see that. So we'll do that, and then we'll have to say true, and then even again we'll have to say 0.07, and that's because on vi dot dot you can see that the radius is default 0.07, but we have to manually specify that. So just be sure to do all that, and this should be fine right here. Also, I mean, this will be available in EEDevTools, so you can just run this tutorial and see it all working if you can't figure it out through this video. I'm not sure how good of a job I'm doing. So now let's go ahead and start working on the else. So d.clear white, that goes over beautifully. Let's create another loop worth 1,000, and now we'll just say d.blue random circle 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Again, that's because if you go into the constructor, all we have is all three of these. We can't use this shorthand. The reason for that is because the generator, if you go to the actual circle header file, you'll see in the generator there's a comma, or there's parentheses right here in the default value, and the generator doesn't know how to skip this right now, so it just has to skip this whole thing, because otherwise it thinks this is the end to this, and then that throws it all off, the second parentheses and all that junk. So let's go ahead and get back to this. So true. Again, this is all just pretty much from right up here. There you go. So we have to do this again. This time it'll be red. Also, again, actually no, the rec line will actually go just fine. So I mean, that's pretty much an exact match. Then we'll say d.text. And here's another thing. I cannot get S to actually work in Lua so far at all. If you use it, it just tends to crash. So you have to use like the actual string or str8 class instead. Just create a new one, and then you can add to it just like you would normally. So that's pretty much an exact copy of that line. One other thing to note is that since d.text actually takes a char, we're going to use const char 8. It doesn't actually take a string, so Lua can't automatically convert it from a str8 to a cchar, so we're going to have to call the operator that does it for us, which is why I have this parentheses there. So this is all being wrapped around the str8, and then we'll call the operator of the string class, which will convert it to a cchar8. And then we need the -1, because also in d.text there's an integer at the end which has a default value of -1 in C++, but we can't call that. That doesn't get automatically called in Lua again, so we have to manually be sure to specify that. Then it's just the last line. Press space to draw random 3D points. Oh, again, put the -1 there. And then just for good measure, we'll go ahead and add the frames per second at the bottom. And notice that here I'm using a colon instead of a period. And that's because, again, with the static thing, if you go into timer, you can see that FPS is not a static function of the time class. If this ever loads, you'll be able to see that. Here we go. This is not static, it's just regular float get method. So it's not static, so because of that we need to use a colon and not a period. So again, cast that into cchar. Now we'll just come over here, say -1, and hopefully that's it. Hopefully this works. So make sure we're actually calling it. Looks like we are. So you need to debug and start without debugging, otherwise it's going to be pretty choppy. Looks like we got an error. Oh yeah. Module L. Looks like I'm about to run out of hard drive space, so I better make this quick. Hopefully this works. Yeah, sometimes that happens too. But it's still built. And there we go. There's a random tutorial. We press space. I don't look too good. We might have an error in the code. Oh yeah. Forgot to actually say VI end. Forgot a line there. I wonder how many of you actually caught that. So now, oh yeah, again, if you build it with debugging, it's going to be pretty choppy. So build it without, and there we go. There's the random tutorial where this is all running through Lua. None of this is on C++. This is all running through our Lua script. If we comment out our Lua script, run it, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be a blank screen. There you go. So hopefully you guys enjoy this tool. Leave a comment, rate, subscribe, like, whatever. See you on the Esenthel forums.